I'm wondering if you can get to sort of the apex in 1972,
Mm-hmm.
73, where with the strength of the non-aligned movement and
Mm-hmm.
North Korea presenting itself as something of a model, we forget it really enjoyed a level of support
Mm-hmm.
that, of course, has since been
Mm-hmm.
greatly reversed relative to the amazing strength of the Republic of Korea internationally today.
That's correct. At the beginning, North Korea was much less connected to the broader world than South Korea. It had few diplomatic partners outside of the immediate Soviet bloc, Soviet Union, China, Mongolia, and the Soviet aligned states of Eastern Europe. And of course, North Korea had half the population of South Korea, was much weaker um, in terms of, had a much smaller population. Both North and South Korea were devastated by war. But North Korea recovered from the war much more quickly than South Korea. It had an extremely impressive record of industrial development of the late 1950s. Although I found, looking at the East European records, the economic success of North Korea was much more problematic at that
Hmm.
time than we thought. There was a food shortage in 1955, for example, and another one in 1959. But in terms of developing an industrial economy, North Korea did quite well. But it was when decolonization began, especially in the early to mid 1960s, and there were lots of newly independent countries in Asia and Africa, that North Korea sort of came into its own. And a lot of these newly independent nations tended to look at North Korea as a more attractive model for development. South Korea was seen as a client state of the United States, as a corrupt regime that had a very dire economic situation, and North Korea claimed to be independent. It was not aligned in the Sino-Soviet conflict. It had developed this impressive, at least on the surface, industrial economy, and had done so really on its own. This idea of juche, of self-reliance, of independence, was something that resonated widely in the post-colonial world in Asia, Africa, and the Middle East from about the early 1960s to the, say, mid to late 1970s, before the South Korean model began to look much more attractive. By the early 1970s, North Korea had more or less reached parity with South Korea in terms of the number of countries it had diplomatic relations with. But whether you look at voting in the UN or the kind of appeal of economic models of development, North Korea was clearly ahead of South Korea from 1972 or so to 1975.